The House Rules Committee met earlier today about the process to remove Donald Trump from office. Democratic Chairman Jim McGovern tried to get Congressman Jim Jordan to just admit the basic facts. The 2020 election was free and fair. And here's a bit of how that went.
I'm asking you to make a statement that the election was not stolen, that Joe Biden won fair and square. And, you know, one of the ways to promote healing is for you to say yes and to put that on your Twitter account so that all these people who bought into a lie will start hearing from some of the people that were pushing this. You know, the answer is, you know, the American people.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Joe Biden is going to be sworn in as president. He is President-elect Joe Biden
today.
That's
not the question I asked. That is not the question I asked. You refuse to answer that question, and I think that's one of the. You want to talk about?
I did not refuse. He's going to be the president. I've said that on television.
He's going to be the president. Congressman Jim McGovern joins me now. I want to ask you about what's happening in your committee and the sort of schedule. But first, I want to just start on that point. As far as I can tell, in the wake of the deadly attack on the Capitol, the death of a police officer, the beating and injuries of many more, I haven't seen a single Republican colleague in the House of yours who voted to overturn the election, to deny those electors, come out and say, I was wrong, and that this is a big lie that you have been sold, and Joe Biden won fair and square. Has anyone done that, and what would it do if they did?
Not to my knowledge, and that includes the minority leader of the House of Representatives. I mean, I was trying to give Jim Jordan the opportunity to correct the big lie. The big lie being that the election was not stolen. They kept on saying the election was stolen. I wanted him to say 5 words. The election was not stolen. I think that would send a signal to the types of people that congregated here on Wednesday that, in fact, they were sold a bill of goods.
What your Rules Committee now is working on this 25th Amendment Commission. And let me just take a second on that. I don't quite get it. I got to say, I understand that these are desperate times. They call for desperate and original measures. It's an interpretation of part of that clause. But with Vice President Pence already saying he's not going for it, it seems to me that this is something of a dead end. You're going to move to impeach. Will you get to impeachment by tomorrow? Is that right?
Correct. In fact, we're now taking a break for votes, and the Rules Committee now is considering the impeachment resolution for tomorrow. But look, there are 3 options for Donald Trump. He could resign, the 25th Amendment could be invoked, or we will impeach him. And tomorrow, I believe we will impeach him with a bipartisan vote, and he will be the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice.
What is your reaction to news that at least 3 members of Congress, John Katko, Adam Kinzinger, and number 3 in leadership, Lynn Cheney, have now come out saying they will support and vote for impeachment?
Look, I'm encouraged by that. I want this to be a bipartisan vote. You know, when people talk about healing, I think one of the ways to heal this nation is for there to be a big bipartisan vote to impeach Donald Trump. Look, he is not fit to be in office. What he did on Wednesday, inciting this mob of white supremacists, of neo-Nazis, of the Proud Boys, is unforgivable. I mean, he tried to overturn the will of the people in this country, and there has to be a consequence for that. And his rhetoric and his ginning up this big lie that somehow the election was stolen from him, resulted in this incredible violence that occurred on Wednesday. Look, I was there. I was in the chair in the House. I took over for Nancy Pelosi, and then when I left the House floor and went into the Speaker's lobby, and you can see their glass doors in the Speaker's lobby. I saw this angry mob up close and personal. I mean, there was hate in their eyes. They were not protesters. They were there to destroy things, to desecrate the Capitol building, to hurt people. And this is a direct result of Donald Trump. And by the way, some of my Republican colleagues who gave Donald Trump's conspiracy theory some oxygen.
Yeah, I want to note in this video here, which is the entrance to the Speaker's gallery, the Speaker's lobby, which is next to the gallery, this is the moment before that woman was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer trying to stop them from essentially breaching the Speaker's lobby, which would have meant they set upon you. And I think there's a point in this video where we see you in the background, just on the other side from this glass and this mob.
No, I was there, and And look, and that's when I realized that this wasn't just a few people. This was a group of domestic terrorists, homegrown fascists, whatever you want to call them. But these people weren't here to try to persuade. They were here to do violence. They were here to destroy things. And look, this is an insurrection. This was an attempted coup. And there has to be a consequence. For those who say, well, let's just wait Trump out, only another week or so. That would be the exact worst thing we could do. We need to make it clear that there's a consequence for this kind of behavior, because if we don't, it will happen again. And look, we want to remove. None of us know what he's capable of doing in these next few days. Will he pardon, all of these, domestic terrorists that did this damage to the Capitol, that killed a police officer? We have no idea, but he is capable of that. And so every minute that he is still in office is a clear and present danger to the people of this country.